Right. Hello, friends. So, in this video, I'll be discussing the end position that was reached in the game between Anish Giri and Ian Nepomniatchtchi in the candidates 2020 tournament. This game was played in round 1. So, this is the end position of this particular game. Black had just played the move Queen D3. Um, and after playing Queen D3, White resigned in this position. So Anish resigned after Black played Queen D3. And I got a lot of questions from my students about why did White resign and why, like why or rather how Black is winning this position. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to discuss this position and also go through a few other positions which are related to our analysis, to our discussion of this position. So I'll be going through a few lines, like analyzing this position uh, from here onwards. But before I do that, I'd like to show you a few other positions or basic technical positions that you need to be aware of, so that our analysis will make sense and it would fill in the context, right? So let's just look at the different positions. So as I said, these are the other positions we'll be discussing. 1, 2, 3, and finally we'll go back to the game between Anish Giri and Ian Nepomniatchtchi. So let's discuss position number 1, which is in the top left corner. Okay, so this is a very standard position. It's a textbook in-game position that grandmasters are aware of, or anyone who has done formal chess training will be aware of this position. And excuse me. And I'm pretty sure that both Anish and Ian were also aware of this position. So what this position is about is Black has a queen, White has a rook, and with White to play, this position ends up in a win for Black pretty quickly. So Black either wants to mate White's king, or he will try to get White's rook, after which he should win the game. So let's look at how Black will win this position if it is White's turn to play. Okay, so White's turn to play, Black will win this position or game pretty quickly. So White's turn to play, either White can play his rook or his king, right? So let's maybe take a look at the king move, because it seems as simple. So the king cannot go h2 h1, he can only go to f1. Right. If he goes to f1, just play queen h3. You pin the rook, and if you place king e1, take the rook, and Black will mate in a few minutes. So the king move does not work for White. So let's take a look at all the legal moves of the rook. So obviously, if the rook plays on g3, g4, g5, Black will just capture the rook. If you place the rook to g6, then remember the following sequence. So anywhere the rook goes, Black or his queen, he wants to bring his queen to the center, so that the queen has a lot of options, right? So the first move you play is always queen to d4 check. And now White has to move his queen, White has to move his king. If he moves his king to f1, then there is checkmate. If he moves it to h1 or h2, it's pretty much the same thing, but with a little bit of with a little difference. So if you place to h2, give queen b to check. Okay. Now if the king goes to h3, then we have queen h8 checkmate. And if the king goes to h1, then black can give queen b1 check. He's attacking the rook on g6, so rook comes to g1, and then we give queen h1 checkmate, right? So when you look at this sequence, it is pretty forced. Like forced meaning white has a few options, but whatever move he makes, black either ends up checkmating the white king, or he ends up winning the black or winning the white rook. So queen d4 check. He goes king h2, then you give queen b2 check. If he goes king h1, then you give queen a1 check. Again, if the rook goes rook to g1, then there is queen h8 checkmate. If the rook does not goes to g1, he plays king h2, then it transposes to the earlier variation. You give queen b2 check. Again, if king h3, mate. And if he goes to g1, then I give queen b1 check and collect the rook on g6. And if he goes h1, again I play queen b1 check. I want to collect the rook on g6. If he plays rook g1, then there is this queen h7 checkmate. So what we see in this sequence is if white plays his rook to g6, then he ends up losing his rook. In a few moves after queen d4 check. And the same thing happens if white plays rook g7. If rook g7, then I just play queen d4 check, and white loses his rook. And if rook g8, it's the same. A very similar sequence happens. Queen d4 check. King has to go to either h1 or h2. Let's say he goes to h2. You give queen e5 check. Yeah, in this instance, you give a slightly different check. The reason is that you want to keep the option of if black decides to go to king h3. If king h3, then you have queen h5 mate. And if he plays king h1, now you go queen a1 check. And it's a very similar pattern, right? So if he plays rook g1, queen h8 checkmate. But if he doesn't play rook g1 and he plays king h2, then you collect the white rook by playing queen a2, and next queen into g8, right? So a different check sequence, but let's take a look at it again. Queen d4 check, king h2, queen e5 check. You force the king to h1, right? And after he goes to h1, then you give queen a1 check, and then you have either queen a2 or queen a2 check or queen h8 checkmate, right? So you have these options. So yeah, what we are seeing is that if the rook moves on the g file, g6, g7, or g8, black is able to collect the white rook. Let's take a look if white moves his rook on the second rank instead of the g file. So let's say if he plays something like, let's see, rook g2. So rook g2 is pretty simple. I give queen e1 check and collect the rook, right? If he plays rook c2, then the sequence is same. You first bring your queen to the center with the queen d4 check. If king f1, then yeah, you collect it's a mate. And if he plays king h2, so remember, if the king goes to h2, you want to force it to h1. So queen d6 check. Now if king h3, I give check and mate. And if he goes to h1 or g1, doesn't matter. I give queen d1 check and collect the rook. Right. So let's take a look at it again. Rook c2, queen d4, king h2, queen d6, and if king h1, then I go queen d1 check. Collect the rook. So rook c2 loses in that fashion. Rook d2 loses to rook queen e1, and if rook b2, then loses to queen d4 check. So the final move is rook a2. Then you give queen g5 check. The sequence is a bit different, so you give queen g5 check. And what you are going here for is a ladder attack, right? So ladder attack means the queen will move zigzag, h file, g file, h file, g file, and finally it will give a skewer on g8. Okay, so let's take a look. So queen g5 check. If king moves to f1, wait, right? So king has to go to either h1 or h2. Let's say h1. You go queen h6 check. With king h2, you'll also give again queen h6 check. The difference being white has the option to play rook h2, but now you give mate on the other side, right? So this is mate. So rook h2 is not possible. He goes, I mean, it's possible, but he's going to get mated. He plays king g1. You go queen g6 check. If he plays king h1, then you can give queen b1 check and finish the game, right? And if he plays king h2, then your queen h7 check, force him to come to g1, and now queen g8 or queen b1, either will win. And black wins, white's rook. So let's go at the top of this position. So what we see here is that wherever the rook goes on the g file or the b or the second rank, he's going to lose the rook. And if he plays something like rook h2, then this is a simple mate on queen e1. Right? So this position with white to play is lost. With white to play, white is in his rook's rank. Whatever move white plays is going to end up losing his rook, or he's going to end up getting checkmate. But what happens if this position is black to play? How can black make progress? So the answer is very straightforward. All black has to do is he has to pass the move to white, right? So all black has to do is he has to find a sequence by which he will pass the move to white. So it will be white's turn to play. So let's take a look at how black is able to achieve it. So black to play, standard stuff. Cue the queen d4 check. If king f1, then he's going to get mated. Right? So white has to go either king h2 or king h1. Let's take. They both lead to the same thing almost. So if king h1, cue queen h8 check. If rook h2, then what? I think by now you have realized. That's right, queen a1 checkmate. So white has to go back to king g1. And now you simply play queen h4. Sorry, you play queen h4. And what we have done is by doing triangulation with the black queen, we have passed the move to white. Now it is white's turn to play. And white has to move his rook, which will lead to a mate or the loss of the rook. So this particular position with white or black to play is winning for black, right? It's winning for the side which has the queen. It's just that you have to be aware and knowledgeable about how to win. So with black to play, you just triangulate and pass on the move to white. If it's white to play, then white has to move his rook to a square, from which black will give check and select the white rook. Right. So all right. I think this position is very important to understanding the analysis in the Anish Giri versus Ian Nepomniatchtchi game. This is a very textbook position, and it's important to know because usually if you have a queen with a good endgame technique, like players like Ian Nepomniatchtchi have excellent endgame technique, they can bring a position like this. And once you get this position, then it's easy to win, right? So that's why the end game between queen versus rook is considered a win for the queen, for the side which has the queen. All right, so now that we know that the side which has the queen will always win if there are no pawns on the board. Okay, so a very important caveat to this statement is that there are no pawns on the board. So without the pawns, queen versus rook is winning for the side with the queen. Okay. Now let's take a look at the second theoretical position, second textbook position. This position is winning for the side with the queen. But what about this position? It's queen versus rook, but white has a pawn. White has a pawn on the second rank. What about this position? Now, Unfortunately for black and fortunately for white, this position is a fortress. Right? So this position is a fortress and it's a draw. If it is white to play, I will just play rook e3. And all white can do all day long is that he can play rook e3, rook g3, rook e3, rook g3. And there isn't much that black can do here. Maybe he can take queen into e3, which will lead to a draw, right? And why is it a draw? The reason is because the white rook is anchored on the third rank, the black king cannot come near the white king. Okay, so it's not able to come near to the white king. It just cannot come near to the white king. And so the lone black king is helpless to do anything against the white king. When does a chess game end? A chess game does not end when you win a queen or your opponent wins a queen or you win material. The game ends when your king gets checkmated or your opponent's king gets checkmated. Otherwise, another reason is that your opponent resigns, but the opponent resigns because he sees a possibility that his king is going to get checkmated. Now, like maybe now or maybe after a few moves in the future. But there is a possibility of a checkmate with best play from both sides. And this position is a fortress, right? So there is no way where the black king will be able to come near the white king. And yeah, so this position is a fortress. So with a pawn on the second rank, white has a draw. There is nothing that black can do. Black can give a check, but I'll just move my queen. Here's a check, I'll move my king. Yeah, he just plays like a silent move. I'll just move my rook from g3 to e3, g3 to e3, and there is no way my rook will be lost. And this pawn acts as a fantastic anchor for white's position, right? So if the side with the rook has a pawn, then the position becomes drawn, right? So this is a drawn position. So we have covered the second position. Now let's cover the third position. So for some of you who have been doing lessons with me or are my students, you will quickly realize this position. This is the position where the king is on the sixth rank, right? So this is the king on the sixth rank position. And what do we know about this position? We know that regardless of who it is to move, white or black, it's winning for the side with the pawn, right? So if it is white to move, white will just play something like king f6. If king f8, I'll just keep on pushing the pawn, and my pawn becomes right. And if you play something like king d7, then I can go king f7, and the pawn will again queen. And if this position is black to play, then again it is winning for white because I just go to the other side and again I queen my pawn. So the third position, we know that it's winning for the side with the pawn. Now, having armed ourselves with this knowledge of these three positions, let's take a look at the fourth position or the actual game between Anish Giri and Nepomniatchtchi, right? So white is Anish Giri, black is Ian Nepomniatchtchi. After queen d3, Anish resigned. One important difference we see between the second position and this position is that black has a pawn on e4. If this pawn was not there, then the position was a draw. But black has a pawn on e4, and that's going to change a few things. right? So let's take a look at a few variations. After queen d3, what would happen if white takes the rook on the queen on d3? So if rook into d3, then e into d3, and black is gonna queen his pawn very fast, very soon. Obviously, king into d3 would be a terrible mistake. This would lead to a draw. Right now, white can play king g3, and if king e2, I'll play king f4. So black goes after white's pawn, right? And white goes after uh, black's pawn, and so it will end in a draw. So king into d3 is obviously a mistake, but Ian is not going to play it. He's going to take e into d3. And now if white tries to stop the black pawn from queening by coming and trying to control the queening square, which is this, it is black's king who will control the queening square. And yeah, black will queen his pawn, and he's going to win this endgame, right? So yeah, if white takes black's queen, then black's pawn is going to queen really fast. If white pushes his pawn, then again I'm just going to queen first, and then I'm going to take white's pawn, right? So this is going to win for black. So if white takes black's queen, his rook goes away, and then black is going to queen pretty fast. So what else can white do? So other option for white is to play a move like, let's say he waits with the king, right? So let's say he waits with the king by playing king g3. Now we see the importance of black having this e4 pawn. Black can simply take queen into e3. I mean, he has to give his queen. I mean, there is no other way. But after giving his queen, his winning pretty fast. Takes, and now, as we know, this pawn endgame, the king is on the 6th rank. Well, it is from the black side, so it's on the 3rd rank. But from black's perspective, the king is on the 6th rank, and that's what the side with the pawn has to do. And this black is going to win, right? So I guess if you have any doubts about why black is winning here, check out my pawn endgame series. Right? But for most of my students, this is not a mystery. Black is going to win here. So white will give up his queen for the rook, and he's going to win. Again, if white plays with his king, my threat is to take this rook, take, and I will queen my pawn on e4. Right. So after playing queen d3, black's threat becomes evident. He wants to take the rook on e3. After which black's king will be on the 6th rank, and then he's going to win that pawn endgame. So that's the reason we need to know the third position. All right, so we know about black's threat about taking the rook on e3. So maybe white plays with his rook. Okay, so there are a few places where white can take his rook. Let's see what happens if he plays rook to g3, king to c3. So now we truly understand the intention behind putting his queen to d3. Black puts his queen to d3, and the reason is twofold. Either white takes rook into d3, and then I will take with the pawn and queen the pawn. That is winning for black. Or I'm sheltering the king by using my queen, right? So I'm using the black queen to shelter the king so that it can come on the 3rd rank. So in the second position, what we saw is that there was no way for the black king to come near the white king. Okay, so let's, I'll quickly go to the second position. In this position, black's king has no way to come to this f2 pawn. So if the king was on e1, then the result could have changed. But there is no way for black's king to come to the f2 pawn because white is just going to play rook e3, rook g3, and it's going to end up in a draw. But in Giri versus Nepomniatchtchi, black is able to use his queen and shelter the black king from the white rook. So now the white rook is not able to stop the black king from entering the third rank. It can only control up to d3, and that's how the black king is coming from c3 to d2, and is going to come towards the f2 pawn. King c3. Again, if white takes the queen on d3, then I'm going to take e d3, and I'm going to queen pretty fast, right? f4, d2, f5, d1, queen, f6, and I will just stop, right? I'll stop this pawn. So king c3, and let's say white plays something like rook h3. I'm gonna bring my king to d2, and if he waits rook g3, then I'm gonna bring my king to e1. And if he plays rook h3, then there are a few ways I can continue. I mean, I can just take king into f3, and now I can win my pawn. This is winning. If he plays some other move, like let's say king g1, then queen f1 check, and I take queen into f2, right? He plays king h2, queen into f2. If rook g2, just play e3, and you're queening this e pawn. And finally, if white gives rook to e3 check, oops, rook to e3 check, the idea being he wants to drive away the black king. But here again, I can just take queen into e3, f into e3, and now king e2. And we are going towards the position with the king on the sixth rank, right? So next, white cannot stop the loss of the e3 pawn. Next move, black is going to take king into e3, and we know that king on sixth rank is always winning. So black is also winning here. One statement I'd like to say is that we know from the start that black is winning, but my motivation for making this video was that not a lot of players understood why black was winning, and rather how black can break through, right? So there is a lot of defense that white can put. There is a lot of resistance that white can put, and so what we're trying to learn in this video is how to win, how to continue uh, working towards checkmating the white king, right? And we are seeing the how of it. We know the result, we know the what, we know that white is going to lose this, but we are learning the right way to proceed as black. Okay, and so this is clear. Black is able to bring his king near the f2 pawn, and once f2 falls, the win becomes easier, right? So the win becomes technical. The white's resistance is broken. All right, cool. So this takes care of that, king c3, and yeah. Another move that black can play here is something like rook g7, and I think this brings us back to position number one, right? So here black has a chance to just exchange the pawns, and then again we enter the technically winning position. So black gives queen f3 check, king g1, and now I can just play e3. And once these pawns get exchanged, we know that without the pawns, black's win is easier. So the queen will always win against the rook. But getting those pawns to exchange was a challenge for black. It was not easy to do that. You have to exchange the pawns without giving up the queen. Right? So here, black is able to um, exchange the pawns, and now the win is again very, very technical. Right? So again, what we are seeing in this video is the how of it, like how to take down the resistance of your opponent, how to take down white's resistance. So queen f3 and exchange the pawns, and then white cannot defend easily anymore. Right, so let's go back. So king c3, and I'm going to enter into your position. What else can I do? Yeah, rook h3. I'm just going to bring my king. Yeah, and that's pretty much the extent of this position. For the most part, what we studied in this position is how to take down, like how to reduce white's resistance, and how to get towards the goal of checkmating white's king. Right? So due to all these variations and reasons, Anish resigned in this position. These players are pretty high class. They are elite level players, and this sort of calculation is only a matter of seconds for them. So that's why Anish didn't had any doubt in his mind that he's going to lose this game. But for us, I think it's a good learning experience to know about these positions and understand the decision making process of play. All right, so that's the end for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel so that you can get notified about the videos. All right. Okay.